Welcome, brave souls. Tonight we leave behind the bright channels and curated feeds and walk into 10 real places where history and horror collide. These locations are not fictional sets built from scratch. They are hotels, houses, forests, and islands whose events, atmospheres, and local myths inspired filmmakers to create stories that continue to haunt viewers. Some of these places were the scenes of true crimes. Others became centers of long-running folklore. In every case, the site had a quality that lodged in someone's imagination. An empty hall, a stormy shoreline, or a place people kept returning to in conversation. We'll visit each location, hear the kernel of the real story, and explain how filmmakers transformed it into filmic terror. Before you press play on the film suggestions, find a quiet room, remove distractions, turn your speakers up just enough, and let's go. Number 1. The Stanley Hotel, Estes Park, Colorado. Perched high above Estes Park, the Stanley Hotel opened in 1909 and became a grand mountain retreat. In 1974, author Stephen King spent the night there and later described how the hotel's quiet, its long, empty corridors in the slow season, and the strange solitude of being essentially the only guest lodged in his imagination. That feeling became the seed for The Shining, a novel about isolation, obsession, and a building that seems to know more than its inhabitants. The Stanley embraces the association now. It offers history tours, haunted experiences, and displays that invite visitors to imagine other stories in its antique furniture and dim ballrooms. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, the hotel is a perfect example of how atmosphere and solitude can become narrative fuel. Number 2. Timberline Lodge, Mount Hood, Oregon. When directors want a recognizable, monumental exterior, they sometimes shoot on location and build the interiors on a stage. For Stanley Kubrick's film adaptation of The Shining, Timberline Lodge on Mount Hood supplied the outside shots for the Overlook Hotel. Its heavy stonework, steep roofs, and position on a snowy slope produced the movie's unforgettable silhouette, a structure beautiful in daylight, menacing at dusk. On screen, the lodge becomes a kind of emblem, a place that looks like sanctuary and reads in winter like entrapment. Timberline's environment shows how landscape and weather can turn a striking building into a character that exerts pressure on the people inside. Number 3. Amityville House, Long Island, New York. Few addresses have haunted popular imagination like 112 Ocean Avenue. In November 1974, a brutal family murder took place within its walls, and in 1975, another family reported terrifying phenomena after moving in. The Lutz family claimed their home began to exhibit unexplainable noise, unusual odors, and events that frightened them into leaving after less than a month. Their story was sold as a book and adapted into films that turned a private tragedy into a cultural symbol of the haunted domestic space. Journalists and investigators later disputed many details of the public account, but the address continues to call up ideas of how violence and trauma can be reframed as supernatural terror in books, films, and late-night conversations.
Number 4. Burkittsville and Seneca Creek State Park, Maryland. The Blair Witch Project succeeded because it made ordinary woods feel malevolent and because it blurred lines between fiction and documentary. Filming took place around Burkittsville and nearby Seneca Creek State Park, unremarkable East Coast forests that, when shot with handheld cameras and edited to emphasize confusion, became a maze. The production's marketing pushed the conceit further by releasing missing person-style materials and borderline credible backstory. The filmmakers amplified fear beyond the screen. For hikers in those woods, the terrain can be disorienting near dusk. For audiences, the movie taught a lesson about how scope, camera, and suggestion can conspire to make nature itself feel intent on trapping you. Number 5. Point Reyes Lighthouse and the California coast. Coastal fog has a unique psychology. It hides, it muffles, and it rearranges distances so the ordinary becomes eerie. John Carpenter's The Fog uses that quality to imagine a covering that carries the weight of a maritime injustice and returns it to shore. While Carpenter set his story in a fictional town, lighthouses and the ragged California coastline represented the mood perfectly. Lighthouses stand as lonely sentinels, small squares of light in weather that can erase landmarks. The image of a solitary keeper watching an indifferent ocean is an image filmmakers often use to suggest guilt, secrecy, and the idea that the past can come back with the tide. Number 6. Enfield, North London, Green Street House. In the late 1970s, a council house in Enfield became the subject of widespread reports, knocking with no source, moving furniture, and strange voices. Janet Hodgson, a young family member, was central to several reported incidents that were photographed and reported in the press. The case attracted both amateur enthusiasts and experienced investigators, and became a public controversy that spilled into television coverage. Decades later, the events inspired dramatizations, including portrayals in contemporary films. The Enfield story exemplifies how media attention can amplify a local mystery into a national debate about the limits of evidence and the power of suggestion.
Number 7. Bell Witch Cave and the Bell Farm, Adams, Tennessee. The Bell Witch legend traces back to the early 19th century in a Tennessee family who reported months of sustained harassment by an unseen entity. Accounts in regional papers and oral histories describe voice-like manifestations, physical interactions, and a prolonged episode of terror focused on certain family members. Over time, the story acquired embellishment and mythic status, spawning books and films that dramatize the alleged haunting. The limestone cave near the old property, now a place visitors may tour, stands as a symbol of how folklore can be anchored to a particular landscape and handed down across generations. Number 8. The Hallahan Funeral Home and the Snedeker House, Southington, Connecticut. In the 1980s, the Snedeker family lived in a house that once served funeral functions and later reported strange phenomena, odors, apparitions, and deeply unsettling dreams. Their account was turned into books and cinematic retellings that emphasized the most sensational details. Investigators and journalists examined the claim and debated whether post-traumatic stress, misinterpretation, or fraud played a role. Regardless of the final verdict, the episode fuels discussion about how grief and memory can be represented as supernatural events and how popular culture often chooses drama over nuance. Number 9. A mansion linked to Cheesman Park, Denver, Colorado. The Changeling, released in 1980, is built from a collage of reported hauntings, lost child stories, and motifs common to houses that hold memories. Screenwriters and producers gathered small, uncanny anecdotes from urban neighborhoods, stories of hidden rooms, obscure wills, or tragedies that were quietly covered up, and wove them into a single narrative about grief and obsession. Neighborhoods such as those around Denver's Cheesman Park had their share of architectural transitions and the kinds of old house mysteries that supply filmmakers with texture and quiet, unsettling details. Number 10. Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital, Gyeonggi Province, South Korea. Gonjiam was an abandoned psychiatric facility that circulated in online communities and urban explorer lore as a place of neglect and rumor. Filmmakers used that reputation as the starting point for a 2018 found footage film that combined live stream aesthetics with classic Asylum imagery. The movie escalated interest in the real site, drawing more visitors and curiosity seekers. The Gonjiam example illustrates a modern cycle. Urban legend fuels a film, the film amplifies curiosity, and the real place becomes another node in the internet's network of haunted locations. Across these 10 places, a pattern becomes clear.
Real locations do not map perfectly onto a finished movie. Instead, they offer an emotional core, a crime, an accident, a gap in the record, or an architectural emptiness that filmmakers extract and intensify. The cinematic result is often emblematic rather than literal. A snowbound hotel stands in for isolation, a foghorn for maritime guilt, a wood for inescapable fear. When we visit or read about the original places, we see both the source and the transformation. That dual perspective is valuable. It allows us to admire craftsmanship while honoring facts and people. Above all, travel responsibly, support official tours, respect property and victims, and avoid sensationalizing trauma. If you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us which location you would dare to visit. Stay curious.